Are you ready, kids?
Aye, aye, Captain!
I can't hear you!
Aye, aye, Captain!
Oh!
Welcome back to episode 76 of the Locker Room Podcast. I'm your host, Colin Javinsky. We got Patrick Heffright. And today, my friends, we got another great episode and with another fantastic guest. I don't know where we keep finding him, but we just keep finding great guests for y'all. So let's just introduce him straight away. He's an MMA Coach of the Year and head coach at Xtreme Couture MMA Gym. He's also coach UFC heavyweight champion Francis Ngannou and many more. Please welcome Eric Nicksick. Let's go.
What's up, fellas? How you guys doing, man?
Doing great.
I'm doing great. I mean, I've had a solid day. Today was a beautiful day. You know, we got after it, hit the gym, did all we needed to do. First hockey practice, we were back into it, so that was pretty nice.
There you go.
We're feeling ourselves. How's your day going?
It's good, man. It's a long one. So I just traveled this morning and then wrapped up practice with the team, and then come upstairs and talk to you guys.
All righty, awesome. Let's just kick this off. Let's start through our questions. You know, we got a lot of stuff to ask you and love to talk to you. So
Sure.
Kicking it right off with kind of a broad question. Want to really get into the depth of you as a person. So how did you get into coaching and what really drove you to become a coach?
I come from a coaching lineage. My dad, my uncles, everybody was all football coaches in my family. So I grew up on the football field, going to practices and things of that sort, tape study, film study, watching, things as a kid, when that was the time I got to spend with my dad, was breaking down tape. So, I think coaching was in my blood, and at some capacity I was going to coach, whether it was football or some other sport. And, stumbled across MMA after I was done with football. Started training with Randy Couture here in 2007. He was getting ready for Tim Sylvia, and just kind of made the transition over as an athlete, and that was really it, man. I never looked back. Kind of fell in love with the sport and the gym, the team, the camaraderie, the people in here, and I've been here ever since. So I'm literally member number one here at Xtreme Couture, and now I run the gym.
Oh, that is awesome. So how did you gain the plethora of knowledge you have? Did you start as a fighter? Like when you were like, I really love this sport, did you start fighting yourself, or were you just like, I'm going to learn as much as I can in order to be the best coach as possible?
Yeah. Ironically enough, man, I was never really got into sport to become a pro fighter. I just got into sport because, I liked the competition, and I liked being around like-minded individuals that pushed me. And this was like the pinnacle of it. This was like the Navy SEALs, in comparison of what I was trying to become in my life. And I just want to be around greatness. I got offered a couple fights at the time, and we didn't have amateurs then. It was only like you just basically turned straight pro. And I was going to school to be a firefighter paramedic. And so I had the choice to either kind of go one route or the other. And, I decided I wanted to stay in the gym industry and coach. And I felt like I had a path, and I had a vision on what I wanted to become. And that was it, man. I stuck to it. A lot of the growth for me was, I just looked at a lot of coaches and felt like they weren't expanding their mindset, their skill set enough, that they're all kind of specialty coaches, if you will. Like, I'm a grappling coach, I'm a wrestling coach, I'm this, I'm that. And, Coach Fallis used to always kind of harping us that we're MMA coaches. We gotta know everything from the feet to the floor. And I had a lot of great coaches around me, man. And I just asked every question I could. I was vulnerable, but I just felt like, oh man, I'm going to ask. I'm going to see if I can pick, Ray Cefo's brain or Dennis Davis's brain. And, can I hold pads for you? Can I do this? Can I do that? Just kind of being a pest, if you will. And, but I knew by doing so, I was going to gain a lot of knowledge. It was like going to college, so that was really the biggest thing for me, man, was just stepping outside your comfort zone.
Now, would you say that's the biggest thing that helped you become the coach of the year, and what makes you different from everybody else? Like your difference of like your training style, or like how you really want to be a pest, you really want to get in there?
Yeah. I mean, I ask a lot of questions, even when I'm on the road and I run into like Henry Hooft or, Trevor Whitman or guys that I look up to. I'll ask them questions, man. I'll bend their ear and, what are you guys doing with this? And what are you doing with that? The biggest thing for me, man, is like, I never feel like I've made it. I always feel like I'm still trying to accomplish more. And I think once you feel like you've made it, there's no more room for destination of arrival, right? You're like, oh, I made it. I don't have to work hard. I don't have to do anything else. So I just always feel like I'm the new kid in school, and I'm working hard. And, and now I got some nice accolades. It just makes me want to now work harder and not let anybody catch me.
That is
so
a great way
one thing that I was wondering, you said you grew up in a football-based family. Did you ever watch fighting, whether it be boxing or MMA or anything like that growing up?
Yeah, my grandfather was a big advocate in boxing. He boxed a lot here, born and raised in Vegas. So boxing was kind of like the way I was brought up. I used to box with my grandfather coming up. I didn't go to a lot of boxing gyms, but he boxed himself. So when I was over at his place, he kind of raised me. He just used to box me up. So I was boxing him, and then sure as shit, you're boxing your grandfather, you're gonna be boxing everybody in the neighborhood, so be out back and grabbing guys and kids in the neighborhood and trying to fight and box. But my mom was always pretty big on letting me do like martial arts and things like that growing up. And then when I got a scholarship that they wouldn't allow that within your scholarship. You're not allowed to do jujitsu or anything else and possibly about getting hurt, So, but yeah, when I was done with football, man, I was like, I'm going to get back into training, and, I really loved it. So yeah, it was really the best thing for me, to be honest with you. It was a great transition from football over to something like MMA.
You also mentioned meeting all these big UFC coaches such as Trevor Whitman. What do you think is like the biggest thing you've taken from another coach?
Man, they're just very humble, and the biggest thing I've noticed is like these guys have no invested interest in me whatsoever. Like I'm not making them money. I'm not helping their product. I don't, help them win fights by any means, but they give me so much time and energy and effort. And that just shows you the character that they are as coaches, and that's something that I really, I think I really took interest in knowing that like at some point in my career, there's going to be a young up and coming kids in this sport, and how am I going to be able to help them and pay it forward like Coach Henry has done for me and other coaches in the sport. So that's the biggest thing I noticed, man. These guys don't really have a big ego. They're just actually really, really good dudes.
So I have a question. Yeah. So have you noticed that a lot of these coaches are like you in a sense, where you transferred from like a different sport to fighting? What do you think about that?
Yeah, some have, most of them, like the high level ones have had fighting careers. I think the thing that makes us all kind of similar is that we're all leaders in our own right. Like we know how to lead a team, but we also know how to like, game plan. We also know how to break down film. And the biggest thing for us, I think, is just to stay on the cutting edge of the sport and evolve ourselves. So the biggest thing I've noticed for me, man, is like to be a good coach, you have to be coachable, right? You can't ever just feel like there's nothing more for you to learn. So you always have to keep your mind's eye open, and you have to ask questions, and you have to be coachable.
So how would you do that? Like, how would you keep on the edge?
I watch a lot of tape, and I try to see what like new guys are doing. I watch a lot of fights, and if there's something I'm seeing, or I never seen that, or if I haven't picked that up, or me and my fighters, especially like Kai Kamaka, Danny Ige, a lot of us, Jeremy Kennedy, we're on like a group thread, and like we watch fights constantly all day long. So if one of us sees something that's going on in the group thread, and we're breaking it down, and we'll try it in the gym the next day, and if I know that fighter's coach, I'll reach out to him, or I'll call Coach Trevor, like, hey, I saw Usman doing this. Why? And he'll spend 30 minutes on the phone with me explaining things to me or breaking things down, or here's why we do this, so, and then vice versa. Like we've been doing things with Francis and other fighters, and they'll call me like, hey, what'd you guys do with this? Or why are you setting it up this way? And it's just like in football, man. Like when growing up, you're always going to like coaching clinics and camps and, exchanging knowledge. So yeah, it's just, there's a big camaraderie, I think, cohesiveness when it comes to the coaches in the UFC.
So how important would you say that like assistant coaches are, or like boxing coaches or jiu-jitsu coaches? How important do you think they are?
They're very important because, when you have a deep roster of fighters, a lot of times you can't spend, 110% of your time with every fighter. Give them 110% of your energy and effort. So having a support cast, guys around you that you trust, for one, but number two, that are very good in their own right, and they bring a lot to the table. It really solidifies who and what we are as a team here at Xtreme Couture. So like, you know, Coach Eddie Baracco is the head coach for numerous fighters in this gym. But when Coach Eddie's on the road, you know, I'll pick up his slack and help him with his fighters, because a lot of our terminology and our ideologies and our systems stay the same. So, you know, Dennis Davis, myself, Ray Sefo, Nate Pettit, like we really help one another. And I think that's the biggest thing too. And when you want to run a successful gym and a successful team is, you know, the continuity that you have with one another, and knowing that, like, at the end of the day, like the fighters need as much time as they can. So you might not be able to give it to everybody. So you have to delegate the responsibilities out to everybody. And then everybody feels like they're a part of something.
So would you say the primary focus at your gym is more of a complete, like, well-rounded MMA focus, or is it more grappling based or striking based?
Well, our lineage is definitely going to be a little bit more grappling heavy due to Randy Couture and, you know, my lineage through him and Robert Falls and Dennis Davis. You know, there's something to be said about a grown ass man that can hold you down for 15 minutes and beat the piss out of you without you doing anything about it, you know? And, you know, that's kind of the mentality I like to set on my Mondays practice, is that, you know, we basically go an hour straight hard. There's no rest. There's no water breaks. There's nothing but fucking breaking dudes, you know, and I want that mentality. So, you know, I don't want our guys to feel like that we're going to go in and just knock a guy out, and we want the easy route. The easy route, the fun route, is when you demoralize and take everything he has, you know, like that's my mentality, man. Like, I don't want when we fight somebody, I want them to say, like, I don't want to ever fight anybody from Xtreme Couture ever again.
So would you say, like, from a coach's perspective, because I know when I'm watching a grappling fight, I'm like, okay, they're going to grapple for 15 minutes, but you're kind of saying, like, you prefer that. You want your players to, like, demoralize them as much as they can, from instead of what I'm watching, it's like, oh, knock this guy out. But that's like a whole different perspective that I've never realized.
Man, it's hard. Like, if you ever try to just hold somebody down and not let them up, you know what I mean? Like, it's hard to hold a grown man down. But when you can do it with ease and do it with precision and do it with, you know, strikes and then let them get up and then take them right back down. And then they get up, and it's so hard to get back up, and then you take them right back down, and then beat them up on the way back up, and they stand back up, and you take them right back down, you know. And then what happens? You watch that break underneath you, you know. And there's just something to be said about that. Like Jake Shields is in our gym. Jake Shields perfected that style. You know, he might not have been the most exciting, but when you know what he's capable of doing for 15 or 25 minutes, not only is it hard, is it difficult, but it's a grind. Mm-hmm. And that's what I prefer, man. Like, what do you hear when somebody gets knocked out? What do they say? I got caught. Yeah. I got caught. Right. Yeah. What do you hear when somebody says when they got kicked out of them for 15 minutes straight and they couldn't do anything about it? Nothing. They don't say a thing. Right. There's nothing you can say about it. No excuse, man. You got the lip kicked out of you for 15 minutes straight. So I want to make sure my guys have the cardio, the tenacity, the stamina, but also this mean killer instinct that, you know, there's something about when you take another man down and beat him up for that long, you know, and the only dude that can stop you is either you tapping out or the referee pulling you off.
So would you say that is kind of a different coaching style? Because when I watch a Francis Ngannou fight, he's throwing haymakers. He's like going for the kill, going for the knockout. But like a Sterling fight or Tavares fight, like they are heavy grapplers. Like they try to bring you to the ground. So how would your coaching style change between those types of fighters?
Well, you know, you want to stay true to a lot of what the fighters' kind of background or what their skill set encourages, right? But with Francis, what you guys haven't seen is Francis has been in here for over 3 years perfecting his wrestling and his grappling. You just haven't been able to see it in a live actual fight other than what you saw with Stipe. In the last fight, you saw a little bit of it. But Francis is in here taking dudes down and beating the lip people. And it's the scariest sight you're ever going to see when he gets on top side half guard and backside wrist ride and literally beating the guy's heads in. And he loves it. He loves the grapple. He loves the wrestling now. And that thing I told him about 3 years ago, I said, what happens if you now like to enjoy wrestling and grappling and all the other elements of MMA? What happens then? He goes, I've become the scariest man on the planet. I said, well, let's get to work.
I mean, he already scares me when I watch his fights. Like he's a big man.
Oh my.
Yeah, you think that's scary. You wait till he gets somebody down and gets that backside wrist on somebody. It's different.
I'm ready to see that.
So what were the main changes between is the main change between the first fight versus Stipe and the second fight just that like more grappling based, or what was the main change?
I think it was everything, I think it was his setting, just his comfortability around being around a new gym and a new team. He was moved to Vegas when he fought Stipe, but he wasn't really at Xtreme Couture. He just kind of bounced around. He still had his team up at MMA Factory in Paris. So he was splitting time with them. And, to their credit, they did a great job with Francis. And, he had a title fight so quick in his career. I think the thing for him was just the continuity and stability that he was looking for. He lost to Derek Lewis, and he wasn't really training here either. He was kind of bouncing around still. And then he really committed to the team on when he fought Curtis Blades, the second fight. So I think we're on like a 6-fight winning streak now with him.
Yeah.
So, I think once he found his footing at the gym and understood that, these guys here care about him and we can coach, and he believed in what we were doing and our terminologies and our system, he hasn't looked back.
Wow. No, that's important because like I feel like, especially when I'm training for something, like bouncing around is not going to help evolve a person, like especially in fighting. Because if you're going from gym to gym that are telling you different things you need to work on instead of like setting up a main like focus, that's fucking difficult. So would you say ever since he's come to Xtreme Couture, he has evolved so much more than you could have imagined?
I mean, well, you guys tell me, what do you guys think? Like you guys saw the product against Stipe.
Yeah.
Like he's evolving every day and he's challenging himself every day, and those are the biggest things I think to understand his mindset in becoming a champion is you have to be able to identify who and what you're afraid of. Who's that boogeyman that lives under your bed? Mm-hmm. And when you're able to identify those fears and you go and conquer those fears, then there's nothing out there that can stop you. And that was our biggest thing is we know what he's capable of doing. He just has to walk through hell to get there, and we're all willing to walk with him. And you saw it, man. He saw the product. He believed in the game plan. He executed it perfectly. We did everything we needed to do. And, he's a champion of the world now.
Yeah. And like, that's kind of like the same thing with Sterling, right? Like he is a different fighter in himself because Ngannou and him are like two sides of I'd say the same coin because one's a big dude that throws haymakers. The other one's a wrestler. So what do you think that sets him apart from every other grappler or wrestler that made him where he is today as well?
Yeah, his tenacity, his pace, his fight IQ, his situational awareness. Aljamain's one of the most cerebral fighters I've ever been around, man. And, I've only got to be really around him for this last camp with Piotr Jan. I've actually game planned against Aljo and cornered against him years back. And we were, Brian Caraway fought him.
Right.
So, I knew Aljo, I knew him well, but to be on the other side as his coach, along with Ray Longo and Matt Serra, it's just been a blessing, to be quite honest with you, man. He's a great teammate. He's a great person. He brings so much value to the gym. He's a character guy, man. Like he's a guy that people don't see from the behind the scenes stuff, but he comes to the gym and helps clean and does the mats and helps coach and does all these things that
nice.
A champion doesn't really have to do, man. He doesn't have to do those things. And he takes time out of his day to be present, to be a part of the team. And, he's got me, man. I'm there for that kid through thick and thin, dude. I love him to death.
Now, tell me if I'm wrong, but I feel like we got a glimpse of that after his fight with Piotr Jan when he was kneed in the head and he kind of seemed upset that he won in a way of that fashion after he took the belt off. Do you think his mindset has changed after that happened? Or do you think he's going after it harder than ever before?
Well, he's got a lot to prove now because of the doubters, and, the knee was, I was there, I was front row,
Yeah.
the knee was a bad knee. It was a knee.
Yeah.
It was, I've known Piotr Jan for years too, man. He's actually a great kid. He's a great champion. I don't think he was malicious by that factor. I think he just didn't know where Aljo was and threw an illegal knee, and it is what it is. Mm-hmm. And to be quite honest with you, had that fight with that knee landed, I think myself and Ray Longo were going to stop the fight if they were going to let it continue, because I don't think we could have let our fighter continue like that.
Yeah, no.
One way or another, So, and to see some of the scrutiny he's gotten because of that, it sucks. But now he's got a lot to prove. Now I think he has a chip on his shoulder, and once we start camp, he's got a lot to prove, man, and he's got to prove it against one of the best in the world.
Yeah.
So speaking of that Jan fight, how did you think the fight was going, like before that illegal knee?
We were fading, he was fading. I don't remember how the score was looking. I think it was 3 or 2-2 or 2-1 or something like that. We might have had a round in the bag. But yeah, Aljo was fading, and unfortunately it was probably going to be, a Piotr Jan decision, in my opinion, if everything was going the way it was. But I think for us, game plan wise, Aljo did a really good job in the first round with the volume, but I think he was going a little too much, and we need to be able to conserve a little bit more of that energy. The game plan was right in the way, but we just needed to slow it down a little bit more. And then, and pour a little bit more of our wrestling. The cage was a little slick for him.
Mm-hmm.
Saw a lot of that time where he tried to, usually takedowns that he's scoring at ease. He was actually, the base was slipping out from underneath him. He was getting reversed. So, we're going to have to address some of that stuff, especially if that cage is still slippery, but change some of the takedown tactics. And, he had a few injuries that he had with the neck. So I think for him coming in healthy and, another crack at it with a different sort of approach and game plan, I think he'll surprise some people.
Yeah, because I believe in him. Personally, when I was watching that fight, I loved watching him fight. It was awesome to see him going up against the best in the world. And
yeah, I agree.
It's awesome to see how these guys are fighting for their clubs and fighting for their teams, and everyone's behind them. The world is supporting them. Like after that knee, I want to see him win. I want to see him win the right way. I want to see him win the way he wants to win.
Absolutely.
Like, because personally, from experience of winning by default, it's no fun. It really takes away, like that whole training camp that he went to just to win by DQ. It's like he needs to win.
Yeah.
So, wow. No, we're just moving. So, do you think he leaves himself vulnerable for like kicks a lot? Because after a couple fights I was watching, when he goes for takedowns, he kind of like stays closer to the ground. Do you think he leaves himself vulnerable, or how do you feel about that? Because I know you're his coach, like all about that.
Aljo?
Yeah.
Not really. I think he's he had the Marlon Moraes where he got kicked, kind of a same side head kick that got him. That was his last loss in the UFC, was against Marlon Moraes. But I think a lot of times maybe technical get ups as you're getting up, like we saw with our girl Cheyenne Bays with her knockout over the weekend. The girl was on the ground doing a technical get up and she just timed the hand perfectly. Yeah. That leaves you susceptible. So yeah, I think I don't really say susceptible to kicks or anything like that, but you just got to be aware of them, especially as you're getting up.
Yeah, I got you there.
So I'm going to ask you about Brad Tavares, who recently just won in the most recent Poirier versus McGregor 3. So Brad has fought some like the top middleweights in the world, such as the current champion, Israel Adesanya. What was the approach to fighting a guy like Israel like, and how is it different from any other fighter?
We didn't really have much of a crazy different approach. We had a wrestling heavy approach in the Israel camp. We had some kickboxers in here as well. We actually had Brad go out to LA to go to King's MMA and travel out there and get some work in with some different looks. I think the biggest thing our biggest oversight as coaches, if I could go back and do something better, was, doubling or going off of the double leg into the single leg and transitioning more, because with the double leg with Israel, he had such a wide wide stance. It was hard for Brad to get under his butt, and he did such a great job there. We should attack more single legs and wrestle a little bit more out in the open, and made it more of a grappling match. But to Israel's credit, man, he was ahead of the curve on a lot of that stuff, and we thought we could implement that, and we couldn't. And then, we were kind of out in a desert island with him, and he was, put on a clinic. So, but I was very proud of Brad in that fight, because I think when you watch that fight, there's a lot of middleweights in the world that would have found a way out and quit. and Brad hung in there and now has 5 rounds experience with Israel Adesanya.
And that's crazy.
Yeah, we also saw that same like wrestling when Israel fought Jan Blachowicz. Jan took him down in 4 and 5 and just dominated.
Yeah. So I mean, obviously Jan's a different animal. He's a weight class above and probably 230 pounds, maybe 225 at the time of the fight. So he's a big dude on top of you with a solid black belt. So yeah, I mean, you see the blueprint can be there, but it's also a weight class above.
Yeah.
Now I have a question, because you said like these guys will have black belts, double black belts. How would you train a guy who, say, is more stand-up kind of fighting to compete and even win against a guy who is like a Khabib, who could run you through the ground and just demoralize you for like 30 minutes?
Yeah, I just really, it breaks down on the skill set. I think what you have available to you. A lot of that stuff is going to be predicated on your cage control and where you're at in the octagon. You don't want to put yourself back to the cage, where that's where a lot of guys, the takedowns happen, aren't really out in the open. They're kind of off the perimeters, off the cage. Picking your shot selection. It's one thing when you start throwing big punches at the head, guys just duck underneath, and that's where you get taken down a lot of times. So you have to vary your striking targets. You have to aim at the chest. You have to throw uppercuts. You have to throw things up the midline to negate some of that level change. So Khabib's a Roger Clemens fastball, man. It's coming. You just gotta hit it. It's just he's a different animal. Same with like Kamaru Usman. You see his striking evolve into something else, but he still blends his level change and keeps a grappling oriented striking, so it keeps you honest. You don't know what's coming after you.
Now, would you think, or would you say that you take other fighters' fighting styles as well and try to adapt them to your fighters? Like, I know if they have that like kind of build for that skill, would you try to say like what Usman's doing, I want you to try? Yeah,
I mean, I think you draw inspiration from some of those fighters, but you're obviously you might not take like a Brad Tavares and try to make him a Kamaru Usman just because of skill set, but there's things you can take from it. Like Kamaru has one of the best snatch singles in the game.
Yep.
And I would watch him go against like RDA, who's a southpaw, and then and Usman being an orthodox, and that lead foot's right in front of him, and just watch him feint level change, snatch single, go to the tight waist, collect, wrestle off the cage. And, just there's little things like that and techniques where we would pick up on. And then I'm actually good friends with Kamaru, so, I'll pick up the phone and ask him like, hey, what are you setting up off of this? And he'll come into town, I'll hold pads for him, and we'll, kind of run through some series as the routes and things like that of what he's doing. So anytime I can get with those guys, Khabib or Usman or, Henry Cejudo or any of those top level grapplers, I'll pick their brains as much as I can to see their setups.
Now, fighters learn more? Would you say the fighters learn more new skills inside camp, or would you say they learn the most like outside of camp?
I prefer it to be outside of camp. I think you should expand your knowledge as much as possible. I like guys that go cross train too. I think it's important. I think it's nice that guys are comfortable enough and feel like their coach isn't like some crazy ego, can't train anywhere else guy. I love the fact that I'm sending Max Roshkoff out to go train with James Krause next month. And myself and Dan Ige are going to go out and train with Trevor Whitman here soon. I go out and train with Dwayne Ludwig and these guys. So I think it's important, man, to go cross train and try to expand your knowledge and understanding that there's a lot of the game out there. But and we try to do that outside of camp base, is go learn new things. Now, when you're in camp, things kind of narrow down. You identify what your game plan is, and you don't want a lot of outside distractions or trying new or bringing in anything that maybe won't really work, because you want to center your focus on what the game plan is and what you want to execute.
Now, would you say like a certain part of training camp, are you training their skills up to become like better than they are in certain areas, or do you want them to be their strongest peak performance of their strongest areas?
A little bit of both. I think for what I like to do is I'll break down both ourselves and the opponent. So if we sat down and for Danny gave for an example, like we'll go back and watch our last 3 or 4 fights, and you want to try to see what the Korean Zombie is going to see and what their game plan might be against us, and okay, well, I kind of figured they might have a grapple heavy game plan. So, what are the things in their way they're going to approach us and try to stay ahead of the curve on the game planning versus one another. And just like in football, like if you have like a corner or a linebacker that's not very good, how do you hide them? How do you cover that hole? Right? You roll coverage over that way to help that corner. You scrape to a certain side to help that linebacker. Right. So that's where the same thing kind of in MMA. Like if you have not necessarily a hole, but maybe a deficiency versus a fighter, how do you cover that deficiency up, and how do you expose theirs?
Right. And let me think. Con, I'm thinking really quickly. Hold on.
All right, would you say that that's the hardest part of camp, that game plan prepping for your opponents, or?
No, I don't think it's the hardest. I think it's kind of fun, to be honest with you. I feel like it's hunting. You're out, you're hunting another person, really. I try to take it a couple steps further. I tell my guy to watch as much tape as he can, like it's a serial killer. You want to know everything about this person, the way they move, the way they talk, the way they eat, everything about them. You want to kind of know them in a way that, we're going to hunt this person in the cage, So I love watching tape. I love knowing everything I can about them and their tendencies and what they do. It's kind of weird. It's kind of weird thing to say, but that's the way I equate it.
Well, it makes sense. Like you have to know what they're going to do. Like if they have like a certain combo, you have to be able to predict that. Right. So will you guys ever work on that? So like say someone has like a double jab into an uppercut or something like that to block break and then throw a knee. Will you guys try to predict that, is what you're saying?
Yeah. You look for repetition. It's like, okay, every time he switches to southpaw, he throws a left head kick.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like things like that. I've done that in the fight where I'll call it before the fighter throws it, and you'll see the fighter like, oh, I've done that before. Like just recently with Roman Daldizzi, Roman's fighting and the guy kept doing something, and I would just yell it out before he would do it, and the guy was getting frustrated because he knew I knew what he was doing. It's like Luke Kuechly. When you watch Luke Kuechly play middle linebacker, he's calling the play when he sees the formation. So
exactly,
it's a lot of the same thing. I just you just watch it enough and you understand it enough, anticipate it enough. Like Cheyenne in her fight, the girl always dipped her head a certain way. Every time she threw a cross, she rolled her head out to the outside. So a lot of the camp we worked was her left head kick, because we knew the certain roll that the girl had, her head would go to the outside. Now, in that particular knockout, it wasn't from her head rolling, it was from her getting up. But that technique we worked over and over and over. So she had left head kick in her mind leading up to that fight, so it just worked out in that favor for us. So, you start seeing more and more tendencies, and you want to understand how to expose those.
So would you say those, like you yelling at the other player, would you say that builds like a coach's rivalry? Because I know like other guys will have, like the fighters will have rivalries themselves. Like some guys fucking hate each other. Will you have a coach that you end up fighting that you're just like, I hate that guy, and you want to just like kick their other person's ass?
Yeah, there's a couple out there that I like to beat, but for the most part, man, there's so much respect and mutual respect for one another when you see the guys that you like across the cage, and it's nothing but sportsmanship. And then there's other guys that are just complete and that like I love beating, it more than anything in the world. I'm just competitive, man. It's nothing against them really. I'm just a competitor, and there's guys I don't like to lose to, and that's the truth.
That happens with everyone. Like if you get into a game, like I know Colin and I have, like we play hockey against each other sometimes. So we'll be great camaraderie when we're talking, chatting on the ice. But there's other
when the puck drops, and then it's game time.
Oh yeah, it's over. But like there's other times where it's like you just want to like pound somebody in the ground. Like I know in a rugby match one time, these guys were chatting, like they just scored by me. They were like, "You suck. You're terrible." You know what I did? The next play, I dropped the guy. I put him on his ass, and I was like, "You gonna keep talking to me, or are you gonna get up?" Like, sometimes you just gotta do what you gotta do to get your anger out, and you can't
That's
do
it.
Yeah. There's a lot that goes into that. So have you ever had fighters in your gym not like each other, and has that like messed up the culture, or have you always thought like everyone likes each other there?
Oh no, you got guys that can't stand each other, and that happens. It happens quite often. It happens more with girls, but it happens quite often in the gym. And you just either hey, don't train with one another, just coexist, stay away from each other, or this is the best place to figure it out.
Mhm.
I have a big sign on top of my cage that says human resources. You got a problem, go to human resources, figure that out. So that's the best part about owning an MMA gym is if you don't like something, you sign the waivers, go ahead and go in there and figure it out.
Really? Oh,
That's
yeah.
the problem.
Oh, that's awesome. And I mean, that definitely solves a ton of problems.
Tons.
Them just like beating the crap out of each other for a little bit, get their anger out.
Figure it out.
You think that motivates people? I feel like if it was me, I would be like, if I don't like that guy, I'd fight him. And even if I lost, I'd still want to fight him again because I want to get better than that person. Do you think that helps motivate other people?
Yeah, I think, in our sport where, if you get beat in a fight, you shake hands and you move on. But, I think society's to a point now where, I'll hear somebody talk and I'm like, oh, this dude's never been hit in his mouth before. Like just the way people act and the people talk, it humbles you. You understand, like, oh, I don't want to take this whooping, or I'm going to watch what I say to people. But, people have a false sense of security at times, and they act away a certain way, or they talk a certain way, and right away you're like, oh, this guy's never been hit in the mouth before, huh? So it's kind of like the thing with Joe Schilling, when Joe Schilling hit that guy at the bar, and I was like, oh, that guy looked like probably said something to Joe and he got stuck.
It happens to the best of us. There are so many people that talk just so much smack, and you're just like, I wonder what would happen if I did this. You never know. Like a lot of people. Have you ever met like somebody in your life like that, like a coach along the way, or just like other people that have forced you to change your outlook on them?
Yeah, I think over time you start seeing people's true colors. I think money brings out the worst at people sometimes. Your growth or your fame or things that you're doing, people don't appreciate when you're maybe outworking them or you're doing something better than them, and they get a little salty. But honest to God, man, like I just keep my head down and grind. Like I really don't give a what people think or say. I have my family to feed, and their thoughts and concerns don't put food on my plate. Yeah. So, I just tell people either run with me or run from me, man, because I'm going to be working hard.
Yeah, I got you there.
Yeah, that's the attitude you have to have, I guess.
Yeah.
So off of MMA, or like kind of on the topic, becoming this famous coach now in the world, like everyone knows who you are. Do you think you've noticed a lot more people coming back and saying, hey, old buddy from 10 years ago, you remember me? You want to go get drinks one time? Like, you ever find that?
Yeah, here and there. I'm still the same guy that I was 10, 20 years ago, man. I understand that this sport's a blink, and you're only really as good as your last fight. You can be the best coach in the world, and then everybody hates you. Yeah. So I take that with all a grain of salt. I try to maintain a respect level to my peers, to the people I'm around, to my fighters. But I also understand that, like, man, I might rub people the wrong way, the way I work, things I might say, the practices that I run, but the product shows for itself. And, I've scared a lot of fighters out of here, and that's fine. I don't want them, right? When you take a in your house, you don't want to stick around. You want that thing to go somewhere else.
Yeah, I got you.
So there's fighters in here that are now at other gyms because they couldn't cut it here.
Yeah. And I mean, it's good for you guys to hold that level of like sincerity and that level of maturity that you have to have when you step in that gym. Like, you can't be there to around. Like, you have to be there to work your ass off. You have to be there to prepare for your fight. This isn't like a play date. This is your life.
Agreed, man. I take it very serious.
And even from personal experience, like sometimes when I go to the gym, I'll just see these doing like we call it in our gym ego lifting. You guys probably know, you've seen it before, where people will put like 315, 400 pounds on when they're doing squats, and then they do like a 60% squat, or maybe not even. It's just like, what are you doing?
Right.
Like if you're going to be doing that, you can go.
Yeah.
Like we don't need you here.
Do
You
it
look
right
like
or go home.
Yeah, you look like a, and sometimes I guess that's what you have to do. If you want the best people around you to really produce the best things, like obviously you're producing some of the best talent in the world, like you're doing something right.
Yeah, you just got to set a standard that we all agree upon, and the standard, once the standard's set, you allow it to work for itself. You say that, look, we're going to show up on time, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and once everybody's on board with stuff like that, you don't really have to fight them too much about it, because if they don't fit the standard, they can find their way out.
Yeah. No, I got you. You surround yourself with people that you want to work with. You don't just surround yourself with people you're like, oh, I got to go work with this guy now.
Yeah, exactly, man. I won't do it. Won't do it.
You're like,
Especially
yeah,
in MMA. Especially in MMA, where it's like, if you're not like fully committed, then it really could just turn for the worst, especially in that.
Oh yeah, it's cancerous, man. I've had it many a times with fighters. Sometimes you're working because it's the paycheck, but I'm at the point now in my career where I can kind of pick and choose who I want to work with, and if you don't inspire me and you don't make me feel like I want to get up out of bed and go to work, then I just won't work with you. If you're not like Paul Felder, man, that dude I'd run through a fucking wall for, right? Yeah. Dan Ige, Francis Ngannou, there's guys that I work with that just inspire out of me, and that makes my job fun.
Yeah, Francis's story is so inspiring, especially from how he was brought up to his whole story is really just inspiring.
Yeah, I agree, man. He's a great guy, great human being.
I mean, that's what it's all about, right? Getting the people around you. So what's it like, and you've probably talked about this, but how do you feel like looking at yourself, if you ever look at yourself from like a third person view and you're like, holy, this is awesome. Like I get that you have to keep grinding, but do you ever like step back and say, what I'm doing is amazing?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I think every time you walk out, like for a fight, I'm just like, hell yeah, man. Like I always say no place I'd rather be. I'll always tell my guys that, man, there's no place I'd rather be than here with you today, and yeah, man, I pinch myself every time. This is the best job in the world. I couldn't ask for a better job in the world. It's hard. I don't get to see my family as much as I would like, but I think that's a lot of what the workforce has, parents that don't get to see their kids as much as they like unless they're really independently wealthy. Yeah. But my time I have with my family and my kids is quality. And they know that their dad's out there changing lives and working hard and, doing all the right things. And they love this journey that I'm on too. So yeah, man, I pinch myself every day. I think I'm very fortunate and I never really want to lose sight of that, because I think to me, perspective is everything.
So do you think your kids will have a future in fighting? Like, do you want them to?
That's completely up to them if that's something they'd want to do. I have my 13-year-old daughter. She's definitely not going to want to fight. My middle child who's 11. She possibly could. She's a little crazy and tough and tenacious. And my little guy's he's been training since he can walk. Before he was walking, he had boxing gloves on. I have pictures of him putting boxing gloves on before he could even walk. So that's just him, man. He loves being in the gym. He loves his time with his uncle Francis. All the boys in the room. Like, he's 4 years old and he'll run a blast double. He'll box you. He'll jiu-jitsu. Like, he's all about it. So he'll if he wants to fight eventually. Obviously I'd love to be able to coach my son like Stephen Thompson and his dad. I think it's pretty cool.
Yep.
But that would be up to him if that's something he'd want to do. I definitely would support his dreams.
Yeah. And do you feel yourself living an embodiment of your grandfather while you're training with your son?
Yeah, big time, man. Like I feel him. I feel his presence a lot in me and in a lot of the things that I do on and off the mats. Like I think my tenacity, my approach, my heart. I think there's a lot of things that I see my grandfather and myself But you know, man, he inspired me a lot of ways.
Mhm.
But you know, he was just a tough too. So
Yeah.
you know, I loved being around him, and you know, I try to carry that same lineage and memory along with me.
You know, that's the only thing you can ask for. Just keep continuing
Yeah,
that, you know, and keep moving forward. Well,
exactly.
that's all we had for you. I don't know, Colin, if you have anything more.
Yeah,
But,
I've got nothing. This
you
was
know, I
great.
think we picked your brain for a while, and every second of this was awesome. We love talking to guys like you because you're just the people everyone needs in the world. Like, you're a tenacious guy, you have so much grit, and you're really ready to get fucking dirty with anything. You know, you're
I
ready to lay
appreciate
down.
you.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, you
Thank
say
you
it
for
how
coming
it is.
out.
Not everyone does nowadays. So
Yeah.
Yeah, man. I just, you know, I try to keep it real, but at the end of the day, man, like, I love what I do, and I love the people that I'm around. And you know, if we can inspire a couple people here and there every day, and just, you know, make somebody's day a little bit better,
Yep.
just through hard work and perseverance, man. You know, I think we're on the right path.
Yes, sir. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It
My
was awesome.
pleasure. My pleasure. All right, guys. You guys have a good night. Thanks for
too.
hanging out.
of course.
All right.
Thank you for joining
Take
us.
care.
Thank
My
you.
pleasure. All right. Have a good night.
You too.
You too. All right, so great episode, guys. Look at us go. I'm gonna do a quick wrap right here, and then we'll talk to y'all next week. Please go follow all of the socials in the bio. Special thanks to Paddy McCarthy. He wasn't on this episode, but he really helped us contribute in preparation for this episode. So shout out Paddy McCarthy, former guest. Go check out that episode. I'll put the link to that in the description. I'll put the link to Xtreme Couture's website on there. Go check that out. Go check Eric out. Yeah, I mean, thank you guys for tuning into Locker Room Podcast this week. LRP summer is still rolling, baby. All right, this has been
It's like
Locker.
hot girl summer, but 10 times cooler.
Yup. This has been the Locker Room Podcast. We'll talk to y'all next week. See ya.
Yep, see ya.